I'm Larry Menti. Welcome back to the Delaware Way. Recently, the Delaware Supreme Court put together an Access to Justice Commission to start a conversation on justice in Delaware. The next gentleman I'm going to introduce you to wrote a commentary about that for Delaware State News. Professor Sam Hoff from George Washington is a distinguished professor there and a law studies director at Delaware State University. Sir, thank you so much for coming in. I really appreciate it.
Thanks, Larry.
I was interested in reading your commentary because at one point you said, and forgive me, I'm paraphrasing if I get this wrong, that there were inequities in the system that date back in Delaware to slavery and the Jim Crow laws, which is kind of an explosive statement, especially when you use Jim Crow and slavery. Certainly, well, let me ask you, what are some of the inequities that date back to then?
Well, we certainly have to look at the way that minorities were treated in the criminal justice system from the period after slavery through Jim Crow. We have to look at the arcane methods of punishment that were used in the state that relate to discrimination against poor and excessive use of force, things like the whipping post, and of course the death penalty, of which Delaware is one of 31 states which has that. So I really do believe that the history of slavery and its aftermath in the state has had a negative impact on aspects of criminal justice. The good news is that it looks like the General Assembly is set to vote for an apology for slavery this week. And that's big news in the state of Delaware.
And you think that is necessary, an apology for slavery? It's just interesting that we're going to that step, because it really does that. What does that do exactly?
Well, you know, Larry, I've said a number of things, opportunities it gives the state of Delaware. It starts with the idea that you don't want to repeat it. The actor that played on the original Star Trek series, his family was involved in the Japanese-American internment, and he brought that up as one of the lessons. Another one is that we can promote the Underground Railroad without the hypocrisy of remaining silent on the issue of slavery. And Delaware has established the Harriet Tubman Byway for tourism, for history, and that certainly is another outgrowth of it. A third one, I think, is education, certainly, that we know the accurate history of our state.
Right, and the reason I bring that up is, what does that do? It seems like some of these things are symbolic and easy, and real change doesn't come, and it's almost as if some of these things are done in replacement of some real changes. And it's like, okay, handled that, we can move on. So if that is done without any follow-up to increase access to the justice system, you would see that as a failure, right?
I would, but I would say it's taken 11 years, Larry, from the first organized effort to request a slavery apology, which was done by the Delaware Human Relations Commission back in 2007, but we started it in 2005. It's taken 11 years for that slavery apology to meander its way up to the General Assembly. Delaware is the only state of the prospective 9 that have apologized for slavery, 8 now, and Delaware on the precipice, that is doing it in a way that is different, really, from the other states, because it started at the bottom. It's been a movement that started among advocacy groups in Delaware, not at the top like in all other states where the legislatures started and passed these type of resolutions.
Let's move on to the commission.
Sure.
And your commentary,
Sure.
Because as you told me, the commission was just put together to start a conversation, and it certainly was well attended by several people around the state that are interested in this, the NAACP, the ACLU, many politicians, sent representatives. What came out of it?
I think a number of things came out of it. First of all, we look at some of the good things that we have in the system, but we also look at a number of shortcomings. And what I say is a lot of these deficiencies have always been around. What came out of it is that they're now exposed for us to really look at, criticize, critique, and hopefully improve. Here's one statistic that I don't think a lot of Delawareans know. When you count the death from someone who was the victim of a stun gun by police, there have actually been 31 police-related shootings causing death of citizens in Delaware since 2007. Now, that's a statistic that not too many folks knew, and yet it plays into the issues that we've seen both nationally and at the state level regarding excessive use of force. But you have a lot of ideas from people as a result of this commission. Governor Markell has come out with his ideas about how to reform the system. So has Attorney General Den, including reforming the 3 strikes and taking the $29 million that was left over from the financial crisis settlement and using it in the criminal justice system. You have other groups like the ACLU that are advocating now for a statewide Citizens Advisory Review Board for police, which is controversial and not everybody supports that. But these are the kind of ideas that have emanated from these various hearings and forums that have been held all over the state, from all the way Georgetown, all the way up to Wilmington and everywhere in between.
And we have to wrap it up. Unfortunately, we can talk again, but I've had so many people here to have this conversation, and it never seems to turn into legislation or real action. And that to me, I think, is the concern. I'm sure it's your concern and of other people that are involved in this conversation. And so let's just hope that happens. Professor Sam Hoff, thank you so much.
All right.
From George Washington, Distinguished Professor and Law Studies Director at Delaware State University.